Good morning, darlings. Okay, what we're going to do today is we're going to introduce our new module. Now, our new module is poetry, but this is for your exam. Not going to lie to you, this is hard work, so pay attention and be committed. Right, so there are 15 poems in this collection that we call Power and Conflict. When you get back to school, you'll have what we call an anthology, which is a collection of works. It's a collection of poems, and there are two sets of poems in this anthology. There is the first side, which is love and relationships, which we don't have anything to do with, and then there's the second half, which begins on page, I want to say 15. I might be lying, but it could be true, but we'll have a look when we get back. It's halfway through the book anyway. It says power and conflict. So those are the kinds of things that we will be looking for in these poems, okay? And it's up to us to decide which poems falls into which type of title. Is it a poem about power, or is it a poem that contains a lot of conflict? Now, the trick is that some of them have both. We then have to decide which one has more, or if they have equal amounts, we have to be able to decide which one we would then compare it to, because in the exam, you'll be given a poem from the collection, and it will be up to you to compare it to one of the other 14. Okay, and you'll have to do that from memory. So you'll get one given to you, and then you'll compare it to one of the others. Don't panic. I know it sounds horrific, but it's not. We will walk you through it. We'll study them. We'll link them up. We'll make comparisons. It's fine. I promise. Everybody does this. It's absolutely okay. So first things first, the first one we come to is one called Ozymandias. Some people say Ozymandias. I say Ozymandias. It's not because I'm writing there wrong, except that it is. It's just that that's the way I say it. So first things first then, what does this image say about power, do we think? So what I want you to do is I want you to, well, I wouldn't say draw it, because, you know, it was a big statue and I'm not entirely sure you could. But you might want to do like a face with, like, this thing here is supposed to be a beard, I think. It's not chin. I don't think it's a chin rest. And these two things here are legs, believe it or not, but only up to the knees. Okay, so I want you to think about, what does this image suggest about power? So go ahead and pause the video and write some notes down for me, please. We will discuss this in the next lesson, so you have to have some notes. So go ahead and pause the video and then come back. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you've done that, and I'm going to assume that you've come up with a lot of different ideas. So you could have ideas about who this is, you could have had ideas about who or what broke it, etc., etc. Okay, so first things first, what we need to do is we need to think about the dude who wrote it. So Percy Shelley, and you may have heard of his wife, who wrote a little book, you might have heard of it, called Frankenstein. And if you haven't, you should read it. It's amazing. I know I give you a lot of reading to do, but I promise it's so good for you. Reading is so good for you. So in front of you, you have a few bullet points. What you need to do is, I want you to practice your prioritizing skills here. I want you to prioritize what you think is the most important information that you will need. So I don't want you to copy all of this down. No, there's no wrong answer for this. I just want you to think, what is the most important thing? Oh, that's interesting. I might need that later. Or, oh, that's interesting. That might tell me why he wrote the poem. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, and I want you to pick down how many of them are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There are 9. Get 4 of these down. Any 4 that you want, but you need to prioritize them. So go ahead and pause the video and then come back. Okay, so I'm going to assume that you've picked any 4. So the question here for your stretch and challenge down here is, how might Shelley's atheism affect his writing? So Atheism is where you don't believe in God, and this is why he was expelled from university. That is the worst line I've ever drawn in my entire life. I'm really sorry, guys. He was expelled from university for writing about atheism and not believing in God. So I want you to think about how that might have had an effect on his writing. What might that have made him think about or want to write about, etc. Okay? So go ahead and pause the video, make a couple of notes on that as well, and then come back. Okay, I'm going to assume that you've done that and you've done very well. So let me find my arrow down here. In fact, just let's, right, so this web link up here is really good. If you want to go and have a look at that, it's absolutely fine, but the text is in the shared area. So, did you know Ozymandias is the Greek name for Ramesses II? And I've just said I will not start singing the song, I promise, maybe. But I can't guarantee it. So, again, we've got 6 bullet points about Ramesses down here. Again, I want you to practice, please, your note-taking and prioritizing skills, which are good for life. It's good for every job and career, and it's really good for all your studying in the future. What do you think is most important here that you think, oh, that might be interesting? Just a couple of keywords down here, please. Visage, meaning face, and pedestal is the base of a statue or position in which a person is uncritically admired. You must have heard the phrase putting somebody on a pedestal, making them seem better than they are. Okay, that's what that comes from. So go ahead and pause the video and pick any 3 of these points that you think I need to know that. Okay, I'm going to assume that you've done that and then come back, and that's fabulous, well done. So, things to think about when we read a poem. So we read a poem twice, obviously. We read once the punctuation so we know what the story is, and then we read to the end of the line to see if there have been any particular methods used that help highlight or emphasize any particular points. So, you also need to think about the way that the poem is narrated, the way that Ozymandias is presented in the past, and that he's presented in the present. That's supposed to say present, and I don't know why I put that letter there. Ignore that. I don't know. I can't even. The way Ozymandias is... No, that's absolutely right. The way the present on Ozymandias is presented. Let's see if I can't get rid of this ink. There we go. I thought I'd made a mistake there. See, this is what happens. You should proofread. The presentation of the landscape and links to other poems you have studied. Well, you can't do this one yet because we haven't done any. But when you come back to doing other poetry, you will then come back and have a look at this one. Okay? So we'll come back to this in a minute. We are going to have a look at the poem. Okay? We'll probably do more than one lesson on this, because it is your first real GCSE poem, I think, and you need some details. So, Ozymandias. I met a traveller from an antique land who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal these words appear, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Okay, so this is a loaded poem with loads of stuff in it. Okay, so first of all, we need to think about the type of speech that we're hearing here. So we've got an I, which is a first person. So we've got a first person narrator over here, but that's an A, I promise. I can't write. Okay. I met a traveller from an antique land who said. Now here we've got a speech mark. So this person then is not the traveller himself. The narrator is not a traveller. This is what we call reported speech. This is the same as me coming into the lesson to you and saying, guys, Mr. Chadwick's just said, I saw Mr. Simcock in Morrison's last night and he was buying a big fluffy teddy bear. I didn't see Mr. Simcock in Morrison's last night buying a big fluffy teddy bear. Mr. Chadwick said it, but I'm telling you what Mr. Chadwick said using his words. And this is the same thing here. I, this first person narrator, met a traveller who is saying all of these words right down until these speech marks down here. So all of this here is reported speech. All of this is what the other person said. This is reported speech, okay? So the traveller isn't experiencing this for himself or herself. The speaker isn't the traveller. The traveller experienced this, and you are being told via the first person narrator. Okay, so just something to bear in mind. So go ahead and make some notes on that if you want on your copy. So go ahead and pause the video. Okay, right. So now we need to think about what the traveller saw and what he's saying. We're going to assume that it's a he, because, you know, we just are. Okay, who said, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. So what is a trunk? Well, a trunk is not, in this case, the boot of a car, the American version for a boot of a car. Here, this means the torso. Yeah, it means like anything from waist up to head, up to your neck, okay? This is your torso. So if we go back to that image, that's what we can see, right? We've got the legs over here, but we've got nothing else. We've got nothing from like the waist up. We've got the head over here, but we've got nothing else. Okay, so that's what that photo was about, that image was about. 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. What do we immediately notice about the way that we hear that sentence, that phrase? Okay, so let me change my ink colour down here, guys. Let's have some purple, because purple is cool. Right, 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. That, I can hear you saying, is sibilance. And that is all very well that we are highlighting the sibilance, but what we need to say is what it reflects. What might it reflect? It might reflect a sandstorm and the noise it makes. I don't know if you've ever heard one on movies or whatever, or if you've ever even been in one, but it moves sand quite a lot. So if you're thinking about like the Sahara Desert, for example, they can't map the Sahara Desert because it changes so frequently. It changes so frequently because the wind comes along, and because sand is nice and light, it will move the sand dunes. And where there was a sand dune yesterday, there might not be one today. And where it was flat yesterday, you might have 3 today. So because we've been told it's in the desert here, this sibilance reflects the idea of it being in the desert. Now, what is a desert? A desert is a place where rain doesn't fall. The largest desert in the world is Antarctica. And I know that somebody's going to go, oh yeah, but hang on a minute, it's covered in ice. Yes, it might be covered in ice, but deserts are classified by the lack of rainfall. But in areas like that, you don't have vegetation. So no trees, no rivers, no wildlife, no fish, no birds, nothing. So it's very unlikely that natural life can survive. So immediately, because of this sibilance, and we're having the idea of a sandstorm, we might be thinking about the idea of isolation. Okay, does that make sense? We've got this desert, it's alone. 2 vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. But he hasn't mentioned anything else, has he? It's just this statue. And we'll come to that later, okay? So then we move on. So we've got a method, and we've got what it means and what the effect is, okay? Near them on the sand, so again, we've got this sibilance, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command. Okay, so we've got more sibilance. So this again reinforces this idea of sandstorm and isolation. Now, half sunk, it doesn't mean like underwater, it means like buried, okay? And shattered means, what does shattered mean? It doesn't mean tired in this case. It means, oh, hang on a second, sorry, I've gone really wonky with my pen here. Oh, I've gone really, really wonky with my pen. I don't know what's going on there. Let me try and find a rubber. Sorry, guys. Hang on. Right, there we go. Let's try again, shall we? I'm so old. Right, where's my little pointer dude? There he is. Broken. Here, it doesn't mean tired. When somebody goes, how are you? And you go, oh, shattered. It doesn't mean tired, it means broken. Half sunk, a shattered visage lies. Now, if you remember from the slide, visage means face, okay? And that's what we're looking at here. So half sunk, a shattered visage lies. So it's broken. It's not a complete face is what the poem is saying, okay? Whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read. Well, we'll get on to that bit in a minute. What does it mean that this statue is broken? How does this sibilance, what kind of noise would it might have made when something shatters? It might have made a shattering sound, which could sound like a sound. I don't know how else to explain that to you. What else does it mean that it's broken? Well, it's not been cared for, has it? So it was a statue, and now it's broken. So A, it means it's not been preserved, it's not been cared for, and now we need to think why that is. Why has nobody taken care of this statue that's in this desert? What used to be there that this statue has appeared? It's not like those monoliths that have just turned up everywhere. What was there? Okay, what was there? These are the thoughts that we should be thinking at this point in the poem, okay? It doesn't matter about anything else at the moment. We are talking about this broken statue. Why is it there? Why? Who put it there? Is that to do with power or conflict? What happened? Why is it broken? Why has it not been preserved? How did it happen? And why was it put there in the first place? I know I've said that once, but it's well worth thinking about, okay? So then we move on to think about these phrases here, this list, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command. So we've got a list of 3 here. We've got a triplet. That's how you spell it, by the way. We've got a triplet. Does this tell you that this statue was a smiley one, or does it tell you that it was stern? It tells you that it was stern, okay? So whoever this statue was of was a stern person. They might have ruled with an iron fist. They're what we call a tyrant, okay? This is somebody who rules with an iron fist, like I do in class. No, I'm joking. Oh, well, maybe, no. Sneer of cold command, tell that it's sculptor, so the person who made the statue, well those passions read. I'm just marking this all over the place, sorry. Well those passions read, which yet survive. So we know then that from this, even though it sounds like it's a bit backwards, we know that the sculptor understood how mean or stern or how much of a tyrant the person in the statue was, and sculpted those things. So he didn't make this statue a smiley one, because that wouldn't have been true to whoever the statue was of, okay? So stamped on these lifeless things then, lifeless now. Well, if you think about it, a statue was always lifeless, but I wonder if it has less life now because it's unappreciated. What do we mean by unappreciated? I mean that there's nobody there to revere and appreciate and look at this statue anymore. This statue's in the desert. It's all alone. There's nobody there. It's broken. Okay, so this reinforces all these ideas here about it not being preserved, about something having been there and then gone now, okay? So what we're going to skip ahead to now is we're going to skip ahead to this bit on the pedestal. So when you have a statue, you usually have like a plaque or some engraving to tell you who it is of and what they were doing. Okay, so it says on the pedestal, my name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Now, do we think that this person, Ozymandias, Ramesses II, was modest? No. Do we think he was boastful? Yes. And this here is what we call hyperbole. This is not hyperbole, it's hyperbole. If I catch one person pronouncing it wrong, you and me are going to fall out. Okay? Hyperbole, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. This here is calling everybody else mighty, but does he mean it? No, it's ingenuine. It's even to a point, even a bit sarcastic. He's not calling the others mighty. He doesn't actually believe that. He's the engraving is saying, actually, you're not all that in a side of fries, because look at me, I've got this massive statue, what have you got? And he's saying, and despair. Despair here means be jealous. Look at me and then look at you. Look at me and look at you. I'm fabulous, you're not, get lost. Okay, that's what's on the pedestal. This is the message he was sending out. Okay, and then we've got nothing beside remains, and this is in its own little sentence. Notice this full stop here. So we've had this exclamation mark that ends the engraving on the pedestal, and then we've got nothing beside remains. Nothing at all, just the statue in the desert, which goes to this broken, not preserved. What was there? It's been unappreciated. Nobody's there to care for it anymore. And then it says, round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. So I would suggest to you that there are two kinds of power in this poem. There is power and powerlessness, ofs, but there are two kinds of power. There is the power of Ozymandias, first of all, because you don't get to just have your own statue for the sake of it. You've got to have some power to be able to have a statue made of you, and you've got to have some power to be able to say, I am King of Kings. Okay, you've got to be, I can't do that. I can't go and put up a statue in the middle of Milton and say, look at me, I'm fabulous. I mean, I could, but it'd get graffitied. You know, or the council will tell me, no, Miss Hine, you can't do that. Who do you think you are? You're nobody special. But Ozymandias clearly had enough power to be able to have this sculpture, have the sculpture of him, have the statue done, put up, and, you know, it was there for a good long while, obs. However, it's not there now. Why is it not there? There's nothing else there apart from these lone and level sands, and that's reinforced by this alliteration. And there's some more alliteration when we come to cold command to really reinforce how much of a stern tyrant he was. But lone and level sands stretch far away. Again, we've got this sibilance that comes to the idea of the sandstorm. So this also then highlights to us that the power that we might be looking for other than his might be the power of nature. Nature is more powerful than him. He has died, obviously, but so is his kingdom. There's nobody there anymore. There's nobody to look at his statue and go, oh yeah, he was great, wasn't he? There's nobody to look at his statue and keep it maintain the upkeep of it, to revere it, to be in awe of it. The power of nature has overwhelmed his statue. He is dead. Nature has continued. Okay, we'll do more work on this next lesson, but for this, I'd like you to please make sure you've got some notes and that you have annotated your copy of the poem. Ordinarily, you do that in your anthologies, but you're going to have to print off the one that's in the S drive. I hope that makes sense. If you have any issues, you can tweet me at Miss Hine English, or you can email me if you don't understand. You will need to do this for next lesson. If you have any more comments, we'll discuss it then. Okay, stay safe, and I will see you soon.